Welcome to another episode of Hustle and Grit. This is a conversation about people who are out there doing their thing. We're talking to high value asset people who are doing their thing to share their message about that time where they almost gave up, almost threw in the towel, but caught it, brought it back, and ran it off. Today we have with us a super special guest. I'm actually at the Hammer and Nails in Leesburg, Virginia, just opened up. We did a grand opening here. Shouts out to the owner and staff. We have with us a special guest, Mr. Michael Elliot. And as you all know, I don't do bios, but you're gonna like this one. Go ahead, Michael. How are you?
I'm good.
So good. Tell us about yourself so everybody knows who you are to get the full effect.
Wow. So originally from Philly.
Okay.
Came to Hollywood about 23 years ago with the dream to be in the movie business, and ended up deciding to become a screenwriter. And I guess my claim to fame is I've written a few movies that hopefully you've seen one or two of.
What's one or two? Which ones?
Brown Sugar, Like Mike, Just Right, and I'm the founder of this business we're in.
So let's just pause at that moment. Did you just hear what the brother said? He wrote a rack of movies that you heard of, and all of a sudden he is now the founder, CEO of this franchise, Hammer and Nails. And so tell us about how you got into the Hammer and Nails business, into the men's grooming industry. I think that's the right way to say that.
Yeah, well, I knew nothing about men's grooming at all. To be completely honest with you, I was about 44 years old and thinking about where I wanted to be at 50. And realizing I wanted to do some things that were different. You know, I've been in the movie business for so long, and while I've been successful, I mean, my movies have generated $118 million at the box office. Wow. But I don't own those movies. You know what I mean?
Right.
I owned the flash drive, but I didn't own the movie. And so I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I started praying for an original idea. And didn't know what it was going to be. I just wanted to do something that no one had thought to do before. And one day, 8 years ago in March, I remember it well, it was a Sunday, I needed a pedicure. Went to a nail salon very reluctantly, found myself sitting in the sea of women as the only guy in the spot. And I just remember thinking, I wish there was a place to go where a man could get a pedicure or a manicure and didn't have to feel judged or out of place or uncomfortable. And I knew that place didn't exist. And so the name Hammer and Nails came to me. The fact that the trademark was available was another God wink that maybe this is something I should do. And so then it was about, you know, coming up with the money to do the first one. And at some point, when all my friends said, this will never work, what are you talking about? One of my friends who I approached about investing sent me a text back that said, LOL. And one of my friends said, well, why don't you use your own money? And I realized that I was afraid to take the bet at first. And thinking about my relationship with God, I don't believe that fear is of Him. And when I connected to that, I decided to bet on myself. And it was, you know, I opened the first one in LA in 2013.
You said a lot, and you touched on a lot of great points we talked about here on the platform. Is, you know, back to just betting on yourself. And while we understand fear is something we deal with, I think it's the paralyzation from fear that keeps us from living our full life.
100%.
Right. I like to talk about turning fear into fuel. It's not what I can't do. What will happen if I don't do it?
Right.
What if I'm not obedient to what's been given to me? You know, that's like a problem. So now that you have addressed that fear and moving forward, you know, scared and moving forward, what were your next steps and how did you move forward? Since your friends were laughing at you, it was a bad idea.
So it's interesting because, you know, for me it was about moving with a sense of certainty, right? And I realized that in my professional life, one of the things that held me back was fear, even though it wasn't obvious, right? What I mean by that is, and we got time, we could talk, right?
Bring it on, let's go.
So I remember years before Hammer and Nails when I was thinking about being a screenwriter. And I was working a job in New York for the Source magazine, and I told my bosses that I had an idea for a movie script. And I told them the idea, I had the title. Fast forward 18 months later, my boss said, whatever happened to your script, your movie idea? And I made up a lie. I said I was too busy. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm working for you. I'm working at Hot 97. I just happen to have the time. But that night I went home and I looked in the mirror, literally, and I was like, something about that is flawed. Because I knew I was busy. But what I knew then was I was making 29 grand a year. And while I didn't know a lot about the movie business, I knew that if I actually sold a screenplay, it would make far more money than I was making at my job. So Michael, what was the real reason you didn't find time to write a single screenplay? And I realized it was because I believe that the thought of my name on the movie screen, my name on a poster, writing a movie was too big. Wow. Who do I know in Hollywood, right? And so I realized that's what it was. It was how I thought. I know that when I approach things, or when we approach something with a sense of certainty, it affects how we move, right? A perfect example is when you work a job that you don't love, you do whatever you have to do, right? You get the kids out of the house on time, you go to, you do what you're supposed to do at work, you meet all of your obligations because you know on payday, what's certain is you're gonna get that check. Wow. And it's the certainty that affects how you get things done. So I realized that I didn't see making it as a screenwriter is real. That's the real reason I never wrote that screenplay, right? So fast forward to Hammer and Nails, once I decided to do it, every move was certain. I remember, and I'll be candid with you, man, I remember I going through a divorce. It didn't end well. I'm $500,000 in debt. My credit was screwed. I couldn't lease the car. I could finance a car, couldn't lease the car. So here I have this idea for Hammer and Nails. And one of the thoughts I had was, who's gonna give me a commercial lease? Even with this idea, it still didn't stop me though. And in fact, my broker introduced me to a guy that owned a building at a perfect location in Hollywood. And he greeted me, he shook my hand, and he said, I believe your business is supposed to be here. Marked. He gave me the lease, 5 years. He never checked my credit. He never looked at my financials. And I had my first location. So it was that attitude that affected me. I started, when I opened my first shop, I had very little money for marketing. Grand opening day, Hammer and Nails was featured on Good Morning America. Wow. On Good Morning America. Wow. I had 1,000 square feet, 7 chairs. I'm on Good Morning America. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I mean, I can go on about this.
Listen. What you're doing is you're blessing somebody right now. Someone is actually sitting on the bench with the same type of story. And we have a similar story as we're about the same age, where I was part of a franchise. So I was part of this thing called Cookies by Design. And I too, Ilona was the first owners in the area back in the day, and was scared. I was so young I didn't know that I should have been scared. How about that? Yeah. And then later on figured out this is really a big move. But to go forward with it, and here you are out here on faith, out here just moving forward with the conviction that you're gonna get it done, and all the while the people around you saying send you text, you're gonna make it, this is crazy, but when you get open, then they come in and actually they don't support you either. Oh, this is gonna crash, this is not gonna work, this is not gonna work, I don't know how this is gonna work. Yeah. And then you go, okay, come back and holler at me, and now look at where we are. Yeah. So now how did you move from the single unit to now the franchisor that you are?
Yeah, so what's interesting is a month after I opened my first shop, I got a random email that I thought was a joke. The subject line in the email said, Shark Tank loves Hammer and Nails. And that was my favorite show. Right. I opened the email, and sure enough, the emails from the casting director for my favorite show inviting me to come on season 6 of Shark Tank. There was a part of me that thought, I'm not ready. The business had only been open a month. But, I mean, this is Shark Tank. I mean, come on, the exposure alone. Sure. So, long story short, I showed up at the Shark Tank set in April of 2014. I was about to walk onto that set, and very few people can relate to what it's like to be inside your favorite show. But I'm standing behind the double doors that open. Man, and I just remember praying. And my prayer was, I just wanted to be so grateful for the moment. Without even knowing what was gonna happen, I was just thankful that I was here in this moment, and it was just so,
Hugs.
like, you know, like real talk. Like, I just remember thanking him for the moment. So I walk out there in front of the Sharks, and it's real, right? And I see they're looking at me, and they're not very friendly. Right? And I don't know if you know, well, you wouldn't know this part, but so when you walk out on this show, there is a moment where the Sharks are looking at you, right? But when you tape the show, you have to stand there for 2 minutes on an X before you speak so that the cameras can get all these angles of you. So imagine walking out to the Shark Tank, and there's all the sharks, and they're right there, and they're just staring at you for 2 minutes. Yo, it was crazy. So I do my thing. And honestly, I believed that I was gonna get a deal. I mean, in my mind, this is a great idea, right? It didn't work out that way. One by one, they just didn't get it. I walk off the show, Mr. Wonderful said, this will never work. And I just believed he was wrong. And in fact, when you walk out of there, they want to catch you on tape in your emotional state, right? Crying or whatever, right? Looking for the moment. My moment was so different, because my moment was like, I had so many God winks that I was going to be right here, right now. I had so many God winks that it was impossible for me to believe that it wasn't going to work out, even if I didn't get this money from these sharks. So I stood there, and they got the camera on me, and I was like, they missed out, because this is going to happen. And so I walked out of there, and I'm sitting with the psychiatrist, because when you leave the set and you don't get a deal, there's a psychiatrist that sits with you to make sure you're okay. I was good, but I still don't have the money to expand. The plan was always to franchise, to use Hammer and Nails as an opportunity to bless other entrepreneurs, right? To allow them to, that was always the idea. I wasn't ready though. I get that now, but here I am, I didn't get a deal, right? Fast forward, the show airs. Within 24 hours of the show airing, of course my website crashed. Right, it happens, of course. But there were over 800 inquiries from people who wanted to know about expansion opportunities. And out of all those people who believed the Sharks were wrong, there was 42 that had emailed me and said, I want to invest. And so I raised the money that I was seeking from the Sharks from 8 strangers who had never met me. 8 strangers sent me $25,000 each to a man they never met before. To this day, I've only met 2 of the original 8. One woman, an African-American woman, said, my husband and I, we never invest, but we felt like we were called to invest in you. That's how it started. And so I took that money, I opened up a corporate office, and I began the road to franchising. And to be perfectly honest with you, within that year, I started to realize that this was bigger than my skill set. And I sat with Magic Johnson. He came to my shop, and he told me about how he grew financially after leaving the NBA. And he said it was because he surrounded himself and relied on a team of people who knew more than he did. That quite frankly were smarter than he was. And that was his advice to me. And at a certain point, I realized the weight of all of this. When you're in the franchise space, you have people investing a lot of money in your vision. And you owe it to them to support them with really smart people who really know what they're doing. And so I was aware of that. I had relationships with people who had already become franchisees of Hammer and Nails, and I started to assemble a team of people like Aaron Myers, who you know well, and John Choi, and now look, we have Ilona, and we're here in the VA, and we just came off with the best year corporately we've ever had, despite COVID. And so that's the story.
Man, I ain't got nothing to say. But I got questions. So Mike, take me back to the point where you talk. I'm gonna start with Magic, favorite player all time, ever, bro, go. And he gives you this advice. And I want to commend you for saying what you just said, because a lot of entrepreneurs and people don't admit to that weakness point.
Yeah.
And actually, by stating that it's a weakness, people understand it's actually a point of strength, right? To say that I need help, or to say that this is not what I can do, doesn't mean your idea is less valid, doesn't mean that you're not on point, and doesn't mean that you can't lead the people who are smarter than you. They don't have your vision, they just have the skill set. They still need you to lead.
Yeah.
And I think of entrepreneurs who aren't able to do that, struggle.
Yeah.
They struggle with the single point of failure as being the only thing running. Like I experienced that, I deal with it, and as a single shop trying to run things, it wasn't until I hired on an assistant to take over things that I don't like to do. And when I do it may not usually well. How are we gonna grow when I'm jacking stuff up? But to let it go and then to say and trust, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And my dream is coming to be big, but you rolled out with a big one.
Yeah.
That's what's up, because people don't have the dreams that are big. Let me rephrase that. They dream big, but not big enough to scale. And then when they're scared, they move forward, and there's a power. So now you've assembled your staff, you've got things moving. What was the next step for you in trying to now get to the next level? And what is the next level?
Yeah, I would say for me, it was expanding upon my original idea, right? The original idea was strictly a place for a guy to get a manicure and pedicure. And then the elevation, the next sort of level of that idea was, but what if there was a one-stop shop? What if a guy could go and get a manicure and pedicure, or the reverse? What if a guy could go get a great haircut and walk by a hand and foot grooming room and go, yo, maybe I should get a pedicure? Because I also realized that most men had never had a pedicure or manicure before. And funny enough, understanding that most men had never had that type of service was really the DNA of this idea, right? Like we're sitting behind this door, right? And it's from an old, probably Chevy truck. For me, it's kind of cool because I remember that logo. Like this all started with that logo. Like for me to move with certainty, it had to look real to me. So the very first thing I did after I got the idea, after I checked the trademark, was I had that logo designed. And I put that logo up on my refrigerator. So, and here it is right now, right? Where was I going? I was going somewhere.
Next steps, growing, where your vision is then going next.
Oh, so yeah, I would say the dream is to make getting hand and foot grooming as normal as getting a haircut and shave. And in doing that, we are creating a market that didn't exist before. So one day we're gonna look up, and when a guy says, yo, Roy, let's go take care of our feet, it's not a feminine notion. It's as normal as getting a shave, because Hammer and Nails exists. Not because other brands exist, because Hammer and Nails exists, because we made it cool. And so, you know, I would say in the next 3 to 4 years, there'll be conservatively at least 40 Hammer and Nail grooming shops open. There'll be 26 open by Christmas of this year.
Oh, wow. That's great.
That's the plan. The plan is to become a national brand.
National brand. That's a great dream. Most people don't have that dream. They're like, oh, I'm gonna get in my little shop and do this. Very few people can take it to a national brand level and get there and execute. You know, you're there. That's the thing.
Yeah, and we want the sharks. We want the sharks to be like, God, I can't believe I missed
Yes.
I'm sure they've heard, and they're gonna be clients talking about. Yeah. So your next round of funding, are we available to help you out? Nah, we good. All right. So as we wrap this down, I know you're busy. I appreciate you taking the time. What would you say to the next level entrepreneur? Again, the person sitting at home on the bench, listening to this, watching this, all excited, remember your movies, all that kind of good stuff, and they got a dream too. They got a Hammer and Nail story situation. What do you say to them to help them move on?
Yeah, I would say 2 things come to mind. I didn't conceive of Hammer and Nails until over 40, right? And I say that because I find that when we are adults and we have lives and responsibilities, and we find ourselves doing something that we you know, we don't necessarily love what we're good at. But it's not that thing that burns inside of us. Right? There's so many of us that are over 30 that have an idea, something else that they want to do, but they feel like they can't because they got kids now, they got college tuition, they got, right? And so they feel like it's a little too late to take a chance. Take the chance. That's what I did. And I did it in my 40s, right? And that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have it all figured out. I didn't know Ilona. I just met Ilona. I just met Ilona, right? My point is that, and what she's doing for this brand is extraordinary. Like, not just here, but at a corporate level. But I didn't know her. She just came into our universe within the last 12 months. My point is that you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know where all the money's going to come from. You don't have to know all that. What you have to do is begin. You got to jump.
That's what's up. Hey, so I appreciate you stopping by and taking time and more importantly coming out and supporting your franchisee. As a former franchise owner, it is so crucial. Not just think you just a check and some revenues coming through here, but you're an actual whole person.
Right. So
we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And everybody out there, just remember this. Success does not require a cosigner, but it does demand hustle and grit. I'm out.